everyone, and welcome to our ongoing series featuring our friends from VikingsTerritory.com. I'm Tom Moore, and in this edition we welcome Darren Page to our 2014 Minnesota Vikings preview segment on VikeFans.com. Darren, how you doing today?
I'm awesome, Tom. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Well, Darren, before we get started, we want to ask you specifically a non-football question. Our membership base has a bunch of big-time lovers of hunting and fishing, and on your main Twitter page, the photo shows you with a bass you caught. So can you tell us where you caught it, and how avid a fisherman are you?
Yeah, I actually caught it up on a cabin my family owns up in northern Minnesota. It's on a pretty little lake. It's, right about Hibbing or Grand Rapids, so right up in the woods, and I'm not too avid of a fisherman, but when I do go on vacation up there, we like to get out on the lake and catch some fish. So, yeah, that was a fun one to catch.
I got to ask you, do you have any idea how big it was pound-wise?
About 3.5.
Well, that's not too bad, but I do have to tell you, to be honest, kind of the truth in advertising here. Viking defensive end Brian Robinson saw the photo, and he wanted to know if that was your bait or your catch.
Oh, no, I've seen some pictures of his fish, and his fish, yeah, mine are the bait for his, what he catches.
It's all about the angles of the photo, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, Darren, you've been charged by your Viking Territory coworkers to give us a better understanding of our rookies on the team this year. Are you set to talk about the Viking youngsters?
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Well, let's start where it makes the most sense. Our number one pick overall was Anthony Barr, and he's been getting quite a few reps during the preseason. From what you've seen so far, how do you think his transition from defensive end to linebacker is going?
I think it's gone as expected. It was going to be rough because he only played 2 years only on defense, actually, and it was both as a defensive end where he was almost always with his hand in the dirt. So now he's moved to a whole new position as an off-ball linebacker that changes what he's looking at with the offensive line, how he's reading and how he's reacting. It changes everything. But I've actually been somewhat impressed with the way he's assimilated himself into a new position and a whole new kind of scheme for him. And I think he's seeing the game well. Some of his coverage stuff is coming along slow, but that was going to happen. I think the signs are positive, though, and the fact that he's seen the field as much as he has with the starting group is a positive sign. And, of course, Zimmer has his packages where he wants to put him at end, and some of that stuff looks intriguing as well. So I think the signs are positive.
They always talk about rookies, and they say the game's fast for them, and sometimes where the struggle is to make the transitions, they're thinking too much. So I wondered, when you look at Barr, do you expect him to struggle a bit in pass coverage early, and how much would you expect him to play at defensive end?
Yeah, I think he'll struggle in pass coverage. He even showed a little bit of that at UCLA. They like to drop him off every once in a while in the coverage, and he struggled with that in college, and I think we've seen a little bit of that in the preseason here, just in terms of what he's seeing with routes and how quickly he is to react. But I think he's going to rush a lot. It just depends. The sub-packages, he's going to play a lot of defensive end. We've seen that in the preseason a lot. But also, just in terms of blitzing, Zimmer's scheme is going to bring a lot more blitzes, and we've played cover 2, Tampa 2 type defenses for a long time now here in Minnesota, so this is really new, and I think we're going to see a lot of Anthony Barr as either a blitzer or coming off the edge there as a defensive end.
Well, I think we're all excited about that, but when we look over at our other number one pick, obviously yesterday, Mike Zimmer announced that Matt Castle's going to be the starter for the opening game, and that leaves Teddy Bridgewater sitting on the bench for a while. But what you've seen in Bridgewater so far in the preseason, what gives you optimism that his NFL ceiling is higher than what Christian Ponders has been so far?
When you compare him to Ponder especially, I think this part of Teddy's game really stands out. It's just kind of the way the speed of the game for him. His first preseason game, it was moving quick, and that's all surprise for a rookie quarterback in his first time on the field. But after that, we saw it in the second and now the third preseason game where the other team brings blitzes, and he knows what to do with the ball right away. He knows where to move in the pocket. He knows how to react to what he's seeing very quickly. I think we saw Ponder struggle with that kind of stuff for a long time. When the bullets were flying at Ponder, he had big problems, but I think Teddy thrives in that kind of environment. He's such a good decision maker, and he's so cerebral as a quarterback. I think that's what is going to make him a successful quarterback more than anything.
Well, one of the things that Ponder always seemed to struggle with is he didn't look like he went through a lot of read progressions. It was basically one read and then tuck it away and run. Are you seeing Bridgewater making the read progressions?
Yeah, absolutely. He showed it just a little bit in that first game, but then especially in the second and now third, and he became more timely in the way he was moving between his reads, Teddy. And he did a lot of this in college, too, whereas a lot of quarterback prospects, come from these funny schemes in college where they don't do a lot of reads and progressions. But, Teddy did that in a pro style, and he's shown the ability to move to like second, third, or sometimes even fourth options and get the ball out of his hand quick. So I think that's promising. Basically, you can put a lot on Teddy's plate, even as a rookie right now, and mentally he can handle that. I mean, just because his pocket work is so good and his eyes are so good.
Assuming that the team just doesn't go in the tank or we have an injury, how long would you expect Teddy to actually sit on the bench? And in your opinion, is it better for him to play at all this year or to sit and watch?
Oh, that's a tough question because I think my opinion of Matt Castle is that he can play well, for a while, but then eventually he's going to revert to some bad decisions. He's not really a game manager, so I think as soon as he starts turning the ball over, and this is going to happen at some point in the season, just a matter of when,
sure,
then Teddy's going to come in. And I think he's ready. I think Teddy's ready to play right now. I don't think he has to sit. Not that sitting is going to be detrimental to his growth, because I think he knows what to do with what he's doing now. He's still just a sponge, just taking things in. But as soon as his time comes, I think he's going to be ready.
Well, as we look at the other side of the ball, Darren, we drafted a lot of defensive backs in May with Anton Exum, Kendall James, and Jabari Price joining the team. But so far, to the casual fan at least, they haven't done that much in preseason. So from what you've seen in camp and preseason games from them, would you expect any of them or all of them to make the team? And which ones might have an impact on the defense and special teams in 2014?
The way it looks to me right now is that Kendall James is having a rough go of it, and he may not make the team. But I think Anton Exum is a lock. Or maybe a lock is a little bit strong, but I think he's the best, most likely of them to make the team. I think he's the best defensive back that we did draft. And I think Price has a good shot too, but Exum, I think by the end of his rookie season here, he's going to be a little bit more aware in what he's doing defensively. He's moving back to the safety position, which he played younger in his career at Virginia Tech before he moved to cornerback. So this is kind of moving back to a new position for him. But once he gets some of this stuff figured out, I think he provides the most upside for the defense for Zimmer to use, and he can also play a little bit in the slot as kind of like a big cornerback or like a third safety in the nickel. So I think he provides the most value. But I don't think any of these three rookies are necessarily big-time contributors in terms of snap count. But I think Exum is definitely the best of the three.
Okay. And then when we drop to the linebacker position, I noticed early in camp that Brandon Watts, he did flash early and got quite a few reps with the number twos in front of Mike Mowdy. Is he the real deal, or is he more of a practice squad candidate?
I think practice squad. When I watched him at Georgia Tech, and I didn't see a ton of him, I kind of saw a linebacker who was really athletic, and I think he's shown that. And, some of these flash plays, like you say, we've seen, really impressive. He can do some impressive things, but I think the game moves pretty quick for him. At linebacker position, that's trouble. So, I mean, with his athleticism, though, that's the kind of guy you'd love to put on the practice squad and see what he's like after a year in the system, come back next training camp and get a look at him then, and then reevaluate and see where he's at.
And when you look at him versus linebackers like Mowdy and even a Gerald Hodges, do you put them in front of him, or do you kind of put them in an equal plane?
No, I think Mowdy and Hodges and Adi Cole, but he's on the inside there. Yeah, I think they're firmly ahead of Brandon Watts.
Okay. And, back on the offensive side, I haven't heard a lot about guard David Yankee. How's he progressing, and could he be counted on in 2014 to be a contributor on the line, or is second-year guard Jeff Baca still ahead of him?
Well, first, it sure seems like David Yankee is ahead of Baca, and I think Baca might even have trouble making the team at this point. I think Yankee's kind of going to be the future as far as 2014 goes. I think there will be no reason to move on from Charlie Johnson at left guard. So this is kind of a project type deal with David Yankee, where maybe 2015 camp we go in, and if Charlie Johnson's still on the team, he and Yankee are going to compete for that job, and I think that's okay. Yankee's a pretty talented guy, but he has some issues with balance and some technique things. A good offensive line coach that's going to steer him in the right direction. I think he's going to be ready to take over the starting job in 2015. I actually think he's played pretty well in this preseason, so I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing, but I don't think 2014 is going to be the year, barring injury, that we see David Yankee in the starting lineup just yet.
He's not a rookie, but you mentioned him, Jeff Baca. Is he a disappointment?
Yeah, I think all signs seem to point that he's not going to make the team, but I think Vladimir Dukas, the signing of him, he's gotten all the reps at right guard with the second team in the preseason, so I think Baca might look like he's on the way out.
Well, whoever it is going to block for the likes of Jerick McKinnon, and he seems to be a lot more explosive to me than Matt Asiata at the running back position. Darren, is there any chance he'll serve as something more than the third down back role and maybe be a primary backup to Adrian Peterson?
Yeah, and like you say, McKinnon is a lot more explosive than Asiata, and if you can rely on him to pass block, and I'm not sure if he can yet, then McKinnon could play a huge role. And even if McKinnon is not blocking, is he going to see the field? And I still think yes. I still think Norbert's going to find a way to use him, because like you say, he brings something to the table. When Adrian Peterson's on the sideline, he brings something to the table that we really haven't had. Toby Garrett's on Adrian Peterson, even before that, Chester Taylor. Neither of these guys was really had Jerick McKinnon's athletic ability and ability to create yards when he gets the ball in the open field. So it's pretty exciting to see, and I think McKinnon's really taken to a new position because he was a college quarterback in a wishbone system. I think I'm really impressed with the way he's seeing his running lanes and making cuts behind blocks in the preseason here. So I'm pretty impressed with McKinnon. I think he's going to come around. Even though his pick was a really surprise in the draft, a lot of signs are pointing in the right direction for him.
Yeah, you mentioned his blocking, and I haven't noticed it up close and personal, but obviously you have. What's the problem there? What's he missing?
Well, first, it's really new for him. He was a quarterback, of course, in college, so this is totally something new. And then when he went to the Senior Bowl in January, this is a tough drill for running backs, so just a one-on-one with a blitzer, in practices. But he really struggled there, too. It's kind of, he likes to drop his head. He's not very big to start with, okay? So it's already really tough for him. He needs to have better technique, and this stuff comes with time. There was one play that sticks out in the head from the Chiefs game where a blitz came, and he picked out the right blitzer, the inside one, but then he kind of lowered his shoulder and lowered his head and his eyes and just kind of went halfway into the knees of the blitzer, which worked for a half second there, but, that doesn't sustain a block at all. And I think he just needs to learn how to apply the technique that he learns in practice into a game situation like that. And, just repetition, that's just what it comes from.
Yeah, well, to be fair with it, if that blitzing linebacker was coming to me, I might run to the sideline, so he did better than me.
Yeah, me too.
Well, when we look at the defensive line rotation, we're pretty deep there, and we got two rookies in Shamar Stephen and Scott Crichton. Which one sees more playing time in the rotation this year?
Absolutely Crichton. Obviously, as a third-round pick, there's an expectation there that comes with him. I know some people question the pick right away with Crichton, saying, you spent a third-round pick on defensive end, but Everson Griffin and Brian Robinson are the starters, and, for the foreseeable future, they're going to be. But in sub packages, and we've kind of seen this already, now we haven't seen a lot of it with Crichton. They've been moving Barr to end, but with some of these sub packages, you could see Crichton rushing from the interior. He did that a lot at Oregon State, and you could see him on the outside with a guy like Robinson inside, too. There's all kinds of different things. But I will say that Crichton's been kind of disappointing here in the preseason. I think in college, his just raw power, he could just throw guys around. And he was really used to doing that in college. So he just got to learn to use his hands a little bit better here in the pros and develop some of that kind of technique. And I think that'll come, but, So as far as 2014, I don't think we see a big role for Scott Crichton. But as far as Shamar Stephen goes, I think he's quality depth. He's played well this preseason, especially when they've let him play on the nose.
But you see them both making the team?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, our last question is almost unfair to you this early in the season or preseason, but with what you've seen so far on a school grading scale of A through F, how would you rate the talent the Vikings got in the 2014 draft?
I could put it as a B. I think for having a top 10 pick, maybe a B+. I think for having a top 10 pick, I expected something more than Anthony Barr. But, for some of these guys, we haven't quite seen what they're going to become. I mean, Barr was not drafted for what he is right this second. So some of these things need to play themselves out. And they actually have a few of these different guys. And McKinnon's obviously a big one of these too, where, he's not supposed to be what he is now. But down the road with good enough coaching, these guys could really, really become talented players. But I love the Teddy Bridgewater pick, and I think he's the franchise quarterback that we've been looking for. So I'll give it a firm B+. at least.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we get the quarterback alone in there, I think we'll all be happy. And Darren, we appreciate you breaking down the rookies in the Viking squad tonight. And I want to remind our VikFans.com members to check out Darren's stories during the season at VikingsTerritory.com. And you can also follow him on Twitter at Darren Page 15. Darren, again, thanks for joining us on VikFans.com.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to join you, Tom. Thank you.
You bet. Take care.